Up till now, we've been doing wiring on the fuel injection, the ProFlow flow, or really it's an engine management system. But we also have some other things that arise with that. Because we have the engine management system and we have electric fans on the radiator, we need more power than the old alternator that we had. The alternator that we had was a DN, and it was only about 30 amps. We have a new model here, and this is a 100 amp alternator. Excuse me, a 100 amp alternator, which should be fine, but it presents us with another problem because it's an SI model. So this is the harness to a DN here, the old one we had in, and this is the harness to the SI model. And what we have is an adapter here, plugs in. This plugs into the back of the alternator. That goes on the post on the back of the alternator. This connects to the same post. These go to the same place. And then what we have is a little adapter wire which goes in place of the voltage regulator. It doesn't really in place of it, but it connects the wire so that the indicator light will work the way it's supposed to. And I actually have a little bit of a complaint about that as well, or at least about this kit, and I want to explain that to you. So here's a little bit closer rundown of what we're going to be doing on this wiring system. As you'll see here, this is a kit when you install an SI alternator in place of a DN alternator. And it shows just what I was explaining to you. We have over here the connections to the new alternator. And those two eyelets will go to the post on the battery, on the alternator, excuse me. The one other connection that comes out of here and goes through this with that jumper connects through the connector that would be on the voltage regulator so that your no charge indicator light works. And that's the problem that I have. The way this is worded is probably technically correct, but I have a hard time with it. It says it's for the alternators on vehicles with no charge indicator light. My problem is that tells me for vehicles that don't have a light. It should say with a no charge indicator light. I guess you could say with a charge indicator light, but then that's really not true either, because when the light is on, that means there is no charge. So it is technically a no charge indicator light. It just sounds like you're saying it has no light when you put it like that. Anyway, enough for the English lesson. We're going to put this all together and you can see when we do it. But you'll see that I have the original wire, excuse me, the original wire to the car here. And then we have the wire going through the harness to the no charge indicator light, and I'm going to show you where the jumper goes in on that one now. We got you in behind the driver's side headlight here. You can see that headlight just behind what the connector we're looking at. But this connector goes to the voltage regulator. And I'm sorry I keep going out of frame. I'm kind of doing everything a little bit backwards here. But according to the diagram that we have from this kit, this adapter goes in here. Sorry if I'm pulling it out of frame. And that's all there is to it. Now I may have to figure out a way to kind of hold those in there a little bit better, because this connector had tabs on it that held it in place. If you can see right here, it is very easily comes out of there. So we'll probably find a way to tape it in there, or maybe zip tie it in there or something. But really it doesn't hold any voltage. And in fact, if it wasn't connected, I think it'd still be charging, just that our no charge light would come on. So we've got that here. There's one other problem that we need to take care of. Back here at the rear of the alternator for the last problem, you see this wire, it was in the original harness for the car. That connects not only to power the alternator, but also then carry the charge from the alternator back to the car. And for a 30 amp alternator, that was probably fine, but I don't think it's going to handle the 100 amps that this alternator is capable of putting out. So we're going to take the several feet extra that we have of the primary wire to the car. Let me poke this down in here. That's the primary wire. You can see the difference in size there. We're going to take that and make another wire which will go from that post, which is just battery, to the battery on the car. That way it will have a chance to handle all that 100 amps that that alternator can put out. So when we have fans running and of course the engine management system, and we have the stereo going in the car, it'll be able to handle all of that and not fry that wire. The other thing that it does well for us is, if you remember right, we had several feet extra of this primary wire because it had to be extended to go around and hook on the starter where it got the power from. The power originally came from the battery in the back and went all the way to the starter, and that was the only place that you could pull the power for the entire car off of. So battery cable and the primary cable for the entire car was much longer. We're going to shorten all that up and make it quite a bit more efficient. Some new tools that we got were some battery cable components to make new wires. Got some cutters, some crimpers, and a little starter bag of goodies. You can see some clamps in there, or posts. I don't know sure what you'd call those, but terminals, along with some nice little shrink wrap to make us remember which are ground and which are positive. So let's get started. Here's the wire that we have. This is going to go from the battery all the way down and around. And we're going to make the other outlet here going to the alternator. So hopefully it'll be able to handle all that 100 amps. All right, we've gone down to the 10 gauge on the crimper here, which is, I believe, what the wire is. We'll see if that does it for us. I think that may have done it. Sorry about all this. And looks like it's on there. So we're going to go ahead and put this back on the car. I think this is a little too big for what this is meant for, but we're still going to do it because it needs to be done. Little update on the dash here. This is the way you would see the dash, or the direction you would see the dash in the car. Maybe I should call this a gauge cluster, but you would see it facing you this way. What you don't see, or what isn't here, is normally this plastic would be right here. This plastic would be right here. See if you can see it, yeah. And these gauges would be on back here. I should say I got this backwards. Let me try the other gauge. These gauges would be on behind that, if you can see in there. And then they would actually be behind. Set this down here. The plastic dash. And that's normally where you would see it in the car, is behind these. Well, we're doing a little bit of an upgrade. Not only are we changing the dash, but the car itself used to have a big giant tack right on the dashboard, and I really didn't like it there, mainly because visibility wasn't that great to begin with, but then that kind of blocked a bunch of it. So I still wanted to have a tack, but I really didn't want to mount one like put a hole in the dash, and I didn't want to mount one on the steering column. I actually have one here. I don't have it right here. There it is. But it has a mount, if you can see that. The mounts on here. That mounts on the steering column, and then you can. The only problem is when you change gears, is in a position that it changes as well, and so you end up having this tachometer on the dash kind of right in front of you, and I really didn't like that. It's kind of a hokey setup, I feel like. I know that's quite a traditional one, but I didn't like it, just like I didn't like the big Super Comp dash on the Super Comp tack on the dash. So what I did was I got a little digital tack. See if I can show it to you. You can get right up here. Can you see that? The problem is it doesn't make any. It doesn't show anything. There's no gauge or anything to it until it's turned on. There's a bunch of LEDs there, and they digitally tell you what the engine speed is, or the tachometer basically. So I've got that. This part of the dash, from the metal piece that goes in the back, this is what sat in there originally. Part that said Chevelle on it. And I actually don't have a Chevelle anyway. I have an El Camino. So I took that out, just a little bit of a hole saw just to kind of make it a little larger, and it mounts in. It even has a little collar on the dash, on the back there, that holds it in place. So now all we have to have is, this is the cover that goes on back here. That's the cover that goes on there, and this actually plugs into the back of the tack. So it'll come out here. This will plug into the back of the tack and come out there, and then if we need to, for some type of a TV show or movie for the Queen, we can maybe get some type of a connector that just has three connectors in it. We can then hook that to the proper things here. One's going to be 12 volt, one's going to be ground, the other is going to be from the tack, and we can hook all those up. And so if we need to, all we need to do is just one click of a connector, and it will be dark, so at least you just won't see it. But we're going to go ahead and start getting this put back together and see if it'll work for us in the car. Back in tack here, or back in gauge cluster, excuse me, and this is also back in tack. Get that in there. I believe that these go on first. This is back in speed on there. The reason they go down first is there's a piece of metal there, that the threads are in this one here, so the threads will be in the bottom of that. And then you see that once we thread this harness through the bottom hole here, that way it doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on it, just sitting there. Now those holes will be used for the threads. In fact, I'm going to be using some small tech screws in there, because when we took this apart, the screws weren't, we didn't have all the screws, we all the correct screws. So we're going to put it together with these tech screws, because they're actually going into plastic. All we need to do is thread in a little metal down there. All these around the edge, luckily they're all the same kind of screws here. Got a little bit different, look at them. They come kind of high, they're very small, but they come kind of high. They won't easily get to there. All these ones around the edge. There's some over here as well. I'd love to use a drill here, but because we're running plastic, it's up there. right now. I think it's a little bit cockeyed, making problem with things here. Before we turn it over, there was something that I wanted to show you that I just barely noticed. I mean, I'm not surprised that it's there, but let me see if I can show it to you. Very close to these holes here. Yeah, that's not very good. Doesn't want to focus, but if you can look closely, it says gray. And up here, up close to that one, it says green. The reason why is because a number of these holes are illumination for the gauges, and then some of them are also idiot lights, or lights, indicator lights. Like these up here are the blinker lights. And this one has, if you can see it there, dark blue and light blue. Some of them are just a gray wire, it grounds out against this, and some of them have two wires in it, and they actually operate themselves, ground out from that. So if you're looking closely, you probably see that the little shift indicator is not there. And I left it out. The reason why is this seems to be a very specific size and shape, meaning this year must have been like the only year that they used this, because I tried to get a different one which I thought would work. Sorry about that. And while it looks a lot the same, you can tell by looking at it, it isn't. It doesn't even really fit in the same hole. Because it was too late to return it, I've had this around for a while. I tried to use the needle from this one on this, and it really doesn't work. It's too short, it drags on here. I tried putting it on top of the old needle. I suppose if you screwed them together or adhered them together, it might kind of work, but this has to be able to slide back and forth there, and it's still really not tall enough. You can see it drags on that portion of it there. So right now, I'm leaving it out only because I would like to be able to compare this to other ones if I can find them. They seem to be very hard to find, so if I do find anything online, I want to be able to compare it. But this side of the dash, or the gauge cluster, is really pretty simple to put back together. Let me get that lined up there. There we are. You can see there's little tabs here. These need a little bit of adhesive or something on them to hold them in place. It's really just an alignment tab, because once you screw everything down, it holds it in place against the dash anyway. So there we are. There's that. Well, I say there's that. Okay. Now, if you see here, same kind of thing. This actually pushes the plastic out a little bit, but the good thing about it is it doesn't push it out quite enough to really cause any problem. I think we can leave all of this plastic in there and still make it work. If I do have to try and make one of the other gauges work, one of the other tachometers, then that is probably, they're thick enough on top that I'm probably going to that I'll have to take this out in some way. It is broken already, but I really don't want to take it apart and actually take it out. I'd like to leave it as close to stock as possible. So let me get this turned around. The next thing you're probably going to see is us trying to screw this into the dash. So you won't see the gauges again. You'll just see the back side of the dash and the gauge cluster, and I'll be screwing that on. All right, looks like we have all the screws on all the way around. I've used Tech screws in. See if I can get a little light in there for you. I've used Tech screws down here again, and the reason why, this isn't because of the plastic, but if you see right down here, right down there at the bottom. It's kind of tough to see on the camera, but the gauge cluster actually hits the dash in here. And I think that's mostly what's not letting us get these screws down all the way in. You can see there's kind of a little bit of a gap there and there. But when I take the plastic off, it really doesn't seem to make much difference. But everything looks good from the front here. Let me flip this around so you can take a look at it. All right, looks like you can see the gauges there. As I said, the tack there you really don't see, and you won't see until it's lit up. Of course, the shift indicator isn't there still, but everything looks good here. We need to get some other things. The washer, wiper washer switch in. Of course, that's the light switch, and this was cut out on the old dash. Because we had two gauges in here. So we do have a lighter now, or lighter assembly, which we need to put in here. So let's go ahead and start getting some of this back together. This is the washer wiper switch. Kind of tough to get the other camera. The other camera does better close-ups, but a little bit tough to get in here. Really not much to it anyway. Technically there's 3 little bolts. Kind of funny, this is obviously a very cheap casting, or molding I guess you'd call it, and the not only do the screw holes not line up, in this case I think it's this one, which is actually not really, the hole is kind of filled up a little bit, so I've got to try and push it in and hopefully just clear out a little bit of plastic flashing that's there. Yeah, that seems to be a little bit better. Not really the right way up. Let's see if I can get that in there. No, I really can't. Not like that anyway. There it is. Hopefully you can see that. There it is. Now we need to see about the light switch itself. Back in the car, we have to get the hardware we need from the old light switch. Luckily I had enough foresight to leave it in there. Let's see if I can get this out. It's kind of tough to do it one-handed here. Actually I don't need to take that out. This is the part that mounts it in the dash, and of course the knob to use it. Really what I've got to do is just unplug it, and I can take that over there and use it. This is the other connector that goes to the washer and wiper switch. And you can see a lot of the gauge illumination lights here. All just the gray ones are just illumination. Ones with 2 wires like this are some type of indicator light. And then I believe there are a few of these. I'll have to look, but yeah, see this. If you see the light blue and dark blue, See the light blue and dark blue? We put black lines on those because they were both broken, but that's the blinker indicator light, but it is only one wire. So a lot of those, or pretty much all of them with one wire, they ground out against the dash. So the dash itself has to be grounded. Most of the time it's just putting screws in or out, or nuts or something like that. But I realize that if you're not just an old Chevy guy, which I'm not that old, but I'm still kind of a Chevy guy, might want to see how this works. So normally this is in the dash, and this is a little lock nut, whatever you want to call it, that goes in and holds that switch in the dash, and I'll show you how that goes in. But this has to come out, obviously. That's the knob for it. That has to come out for it to be able to go in and out of the dash. So if you pull the switch all the way out, then depress this little button on the bottom, it comes out. So we can take that out. It's longer than you think, and this can come out. Here's the old one. Let's get the new one put in. Hope this isn't too hard to see. My bench is tough to do anything one-handed and have a camera in there, and so I've kind of got to set the camera the way I can and look at it here. But this is the grounding strap that we need to go in there. This is where the switch is going to go. So I'm just going to get that over the hole. Well, let's put this in here first, actually. So that goes in there. Put the grounding strap over it. And then the switch itself will go upright on there. And we need to get that screwed in there. You can't see my hands turning here, but I am turning the front of the switch with my fingers. The front of it actually has a little slot all the way across it. In fact, let me see if I can show that to you. If you can see that, it's kind of upside down. A little more light on there. Kind of upside down. But that's what these little tabs are for. I'll get it as far as I can by hand here. And then either a screwdriver or a set of not diagonal cutters, needle nose also works well. Just got to be careful not to scratch your dash. Come on. Alright, that's in there pretty snug. Let's take a look around the back. Yeah, we can actually tighten it up a little bit more. Yep, I say that, but then it turns the nut on the other side. Alright. Sorry, been moving things around for you. a little bit out of the frame there, but now this is the top of the switch. Here's a wire that comes from that grounding strap. Too many hands needed to do something here. This is a grounding strap that'll go to ground on the chassis somewhere. The lights will plug into here, or the connector will plug into here, and the connector for the, let's see if you can see that. Yep, the connector for the wiper and washer is way up there, just in frame. Right here, there's a little 3-pin connector that goes on that. So here's the new dash, ready to go in, at least as far as we can get right now. We've got both of the main gauges, speedometer, fuel, and all of the oil pressure and charge lights and everything like that. Right now, you can kind of see the empty space there for the shifter indicator. We're still trying to wait to find something to go in there. I have not been able to find anything aftermarket. I found one that I thought would fit, but evidently 69 may go with 68, I don't know, but the things like 68 through 72, that it does not correct the shift mechanism, or the indicator mechanism, the prindle as we call it, doesn't go in there. This right here, sorry for just the glare there, you might be able to see it. This is in the center. Used to be the little Chevelle emblem right here, but this is not actually Chevelle, and so we put a tack in there. It's a digital tack. It'll light up when it started. If I want it to look original, then I can probably take that or just disconnect the wire so it doesn't come on. Over here we have the lighter. Now, if you don't remember, the old dash here, that portion where the lighter was kind of hacked out for a couple of gauges. So we've redone that so we don't need those gauges, and we're going to put a lighter back in there. We don't smoke, but as all those lighters, or cigarette lighters are now called, it's going to be a power supply to charge phone or whatever. This, of course, here is the controls, the climate controls, and those are still in the car. Eventually we're going to be getting an aftermarket AC unit to be going in there, so those controls will change anyway. Of course, the radio goes here, the radios go there. We are getting a retro sound radio to go in there so that it looks period correct. And I have also a new ashtray to go in there. The framework is all in the car, but you have to screw in the new ashtray that I got, and that will fill that hole. Plus, something that is not here right now, but the car has never had the plastic piece underneath the steering column, and I bought a new one of those, so we'll be putting one of those in once we get all the dash and everything in. But let's go ahead and get started putting it in. We're here under the dash, or in the car, looking under the dash, and just trying to get a few things straightened out. We've got a few wires here that we need to figure out where they go to. If you look, this one here, it's yellow. It was crimped onto something, but I honestly don't know what. It was just kind of hanging there. So I'm not sure what that goes to, but we need to check and see what state it is, just normally, and then with the key on, to make sure it's not a power, switched power, or just straight power. We have a wire up here, which looks yellow, but if you look on the tip, very closely on the tip, there's a little bit of orange. And if you pull back in the loom, it's really an orange as well. We need to check the state on that. And then we have a black one up here. I can get it out of the shadow. That one is, I imagine, a ground because it's black, but we've got the power probe here. We're going to check all that out. It's got it hooked up to the battery in the car. We're going to check here. Okay, so we've got 12.9 volts. That's pretty good. And if you see, the key is off. So that means that that is powered all the time. Here we have this yellow one down here. Shows as a ground. And so that is a ground. What we need to do, I'm going to have to switch hands here, but we need to turn the key on. There's some lights for us. We know that the key is on. And so that yellow becomes a keyed 12 volts or switched 12 volts. While we've got the key on, we're going to check this black one here. You can tell by the tone, whoops, that it's probably going to be a ground. Alright, so that is a ground, and that's with the key on. I doubt very seriously it's going to change with the key off. Nope. So that is a ground. So my guess is that the orange here, because I've looked on the schematic, so there it is, you can kind of tell it's orange on the bottom. The orange wire here, I believe, according to the schematics, goes to the cigarette lighter, or 12 volt adapter as we would call it now. This is most likely the ground to that, so that it will operate properly, because it's just mounted on a plastic surface, so that won't do any good. This, my guess is I don't know exactly, but I'm guessing that it pulled out of the wiring that I had to the radio here. I don't remember having it connected to that, but it looks like something came loose. Usually the yellow on these harnesses are switched power for the radio. And then, of course, we have red, which is supposed to be the, excuse me, I think I've gotten that backwards. I think I believe red is 12 volts common, or positive. Let's try that over again. I believe the red is 12 volts all the time, and yellow is switched 12 volts. Now, I could have that backwards, but all of this here, this wiring in the bottom is radio. It's the old radio. It's a different single DIN style we're taking out, so we're just keeping that in the back. Over here, this is a connection for the controls. Once they go in there, it hooks up here for the switch for the fan. And this, although I don't believe it was plugged anywhere, I think that this is the courtesy light for the glove box. So we'll get all that put back in there. You can see all the dash lights hanging here. Some of these are just illumination. Some are warning lights. Over here we have the connections for the wiper motor, and this is the light switch connection. And you can see these are for the dash, lots of other illumination and indicator lights. So we're going to go ahead and start getting everything put together in there and see what we can do. In addition to these other wires, which are messed up, if you remember, the dash had a piece cut out that gauges were put in. And what they did, or what someone did, was strip the wires here on, this is just an illumination bulb. They stripped the wire and then wound / soldered another wire to it to go to the lights for those gauges. And then, of course, on top of that, they actually put some tape over it. So I've cleaned all that off. It doesn't look really good, but what I think I'm going to do is use one of these connectors that I've bought. They're a soft solder connection, and then shrink wrap on the outside, and they seem to do really well. So what I'll do is actually clip that wire, clip this wire, and then put the connection on the two there and put it back together. It's an illumination bulb. Hopefully it won't cause any problems with the length of the wire to get to the dash. As you can guess, it's been several days, but here is the picture of the dash all in. I wanted to make some film for you of putting it in, and I did, but really none of the footage was worth watching. You can see here I've got all of the light switches, the washer wiper switches, all of the gauges are there. You can see this is where the tachometer will be, or is, but I don't have it on right now. This is where the shift indicator is out. I left it out because I can't find a good replacement for it and mine is broken. But we have the cigarette lighter, or in this case a power adapter to charge phones or whatever. And all the controls, those will eventually be changed because we're going to get an air conditioning unit. And we have the retro radio here. That is, you can see the sticker on the front of it says El Camino. It's actually an LED behind that. We've even got the ashtray working. So all in all, it's really good. We're going to see if we can end the video here. Hopefully next time we'll have the engine pre-lubed and ready to go.